Thank you all for coming out here. John, thanks for joining us. So I figured we'd start a little bit in the backstory before we get to Pokemon Go. You sort of started at Google working on Google Earth, Google Maps, and all these products. And then you came up eventually with this game called Ingress. What's the inspiration for that?
Yeah, so I was really lucky. I helped start a company called Keyhole that Google bought back in 2004, and we worked on this Earth Viewer project, which became became Google Earth, basically. And I worked on Maps and Earth and those related projects for about 6 years or so at Google. And that group grew from a few dozen people. I think we're about 30 people in 2004 to 2010. It was over 1,000 engineers and product managers and a couple of thousand contractors working on Google Maps. So it became this massive thing, and I wanted to go do something a little more entrepreneurial. I had been at several startups before coming to Google. And so, yeah, we were just thinking about, we've built this map of the world. We had helped bring maps to Android and to the iPhone, GPS. I grew up as a gamer. People seem to like to do social things on games. So it seemed like there was something interesting at the intersection of maps and mobile phones and gaming. So we formed this little group. We got permission from the higher ups at Google, primarily Larry at the time, to go give it a shot. And yeah, we just started trying to create something interesting in that area. We did Field Trip first, which is a product that's still out there. It's about discovering information about historical sites and cultural things in your immediate vicinity. And then, as that product was launching, we started working on our second product, which is Ingress, which is really the precursor to Pokemon Go. And we incorporated, some of the concepts around location and multiplayer, discovery of local places, and put that product out there.
You've described your company's sort of mission as involving exploration and exercise and sort of the real-world social interactions. Those don't sound like the normal sort of mission statements you'd hear from a game company, which probably involves more in fun and adventure and virtual exploration. Mm-hmm. So where does this mission come from, and how does that sort of jive with being a game company?
Well, we're definitely about fun and adventure, so not ruling those things out. But we were in this interesting position of starting this up inside of Google. So, I guess the mentality within the company was you don't just copy somebody else. You try to do something innovative. So we were looking at the area we wanted to explore and thinking about what we could add to, the universe of products out there that other people weren't doing. We weren't really interested in just kind of trying to copy somebody else's success or copy somebody else's formula. We wanted to try to explore a new area and see if there's something worthwhile in it. So we came up with a list of, I don't know what you would call them, like our sort of philosophy of things that would guide our decision making about what kinds of products we wanted to build. And one of them was, okay, if it's a game, you'll have to go out and move around to play it. You'll have to go outside and visit new places. We came up with this idea about seeing the world with new eyes, I think is how we put it. But the basic notion was that there's a lot of cool historical stuff and lore and kind of unknown secrets in your own neighborhood that you don't know about. And if a product could help you discover those, like that would be a good thing. Exercise, as a parent, there's this idea that we wanted to try to build a product that would kind of encourage exercise, but without doing it in kind of a heavy-handed way. So I was struggling with the whole screen time issue with my kids, trying to pull people away from these really compelling products that all of us have built. So that was, one of the things that we were trying to achieve. And then social, like we had sort of flagged this idea of real-world social. Obviously, this was a post-Facebook, world where online social had exploded, and people were making connections like wildfire online and updating status and, doing all that. But translating that into the real world, we felt like maybe there's some opportunity for a product to help people reconnect physically, to reconnect, offline, through a product. So we didn't know exactly what form that would take, but we felt like there was maybe an opportunity to unlock something there. So we had those as our kind of guide rails for the product, and we took it from there.
When it came time to leave Google as they underwent their restructuring into Alphabet last year, what was sort of your strategy? Why did Pokemon become the partner you wanted to work with? Why did you sort of mostly take money from strategic investors as opposed to just venture capitalists at that stage? What was sort of the strategy and thinking at that point?
Well, there's a lot that went into that. I mean, I guess to kind of unpack it, we had launched Ingress in 2012, and the game was growing and it became, I would describe it as kind of a cult hit. It's had 15 million downloads, is thriving, and continues to grow. We felt like we had learned a lot about building a game that kind of followed those guidelines that we had set for ourselves: exploration, discovery, exercise, social, and we were thinking about, well, how do we package up the parts of that that are really working and take it to a wider audience? And we had considered a variety of options, different internal ideas, sort of totally internally developed IP, and we also looked across the film and gaming world at IPs that might be a good match, where we could combine a well-known existing property with the type of gameplay that we really wanted to continue to evolve. And in those discussions, Pokemon came up really early on. For those of you, I imagine a lot of you have played a lot of Pokemon or familiar with that franchise. It just represented something that was, beloved around the world, very well known to gamers and to non-gamers, through the animation. And it had this attribute of the whole backstory of the game is that the trainer's out in this environment that looks like the real world discovering Pokemon. So it was really perfectly set up to translate that into this kind of real world augmented reality game that we do. So I guess it was right around April 2014, Google did an April Fool's joke. The Maps team did this mashup with Pokemon. They did a video that got 18 million views. We on the Niantic team had been talking about different IPs to use, and we saw how that virally took off. And so we reached out to the Pokemon company at that point and said, hey, this sort of April Fool's joke did really well. Let's build a real game around that concept based on what we've done with Ingress. And they had already been playing Ingress, and actually the CEO of the Pokemon company, Mr. Ishihara, was, I think, a level 11 Ingress player when I met him, and he was playing with his wife every day. So they were into the concept and kind of got it from day one. So I've given a lot of pitches for different kinds of businesses and partnerships through the years, but this was one, and I'm sure you guys have experienced a similar thing, where from that very first meeting, it just seemed inevitable. Both parties were like, we have to do this. So we got a deal signed shortly after that. And then whenever the Alphabet reorganization happened, and we were looking at how to continue doing our project, whether to fold that in under Android or one of the other Google divisions, or whether to seek outside financing and do it as an independent company outside of Google. We talked to VCs, and we talked to our partners at the Pokemon company, and through them with Nintendo. And they were ready and willing to step up with financing and really get behind the product in that way, to be an equity investor as well as a contributor of IP and kind of gaming expertise. And that seemed like the right way to go. I mean, we could have taken money from venture folks, but to do it and create that kind of close relationship with Pokemon and Nintendo, and kind of made them comfortable really collaborating with us around this kind of crown jewel property. I think it made that whole relationship just rock solid on both sides, and they've been terrific partners.
How familiar were you with sort of the Pokemon franchise before the April Fool's Day joke?
Well, I missed it as a gamer. It came after that sort of phase for me. But as a father of three, my oldest son has just graduated from high school. a few months ago, and I have a girl who will be a junior next year, and a younger son who's 10. So, our house was filled with Pokemon trading cards and guidebooks and videos and a stack of cartridges for several generations of Nintendo mobile gaming console products. So I knew it, mainly through the eyes of my children, as a game property. But it was clear, and if you guys have kids who play those games, I mean, it is the kind of game that your kid will spend hours and hours and hours with. So it has got, people just that really enjoy that world and kind of being in it. So it felt like, just like a super solid thing to build on.
And then in taking Ingress sort of base and moving it into Pokemon, you were saying that you completely scrapped the code. You sort of rewrote the engine for it. What are the advantages, disadvantages to doing that? And I mean, is that sort of commonplace, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys are developers, right? Or run companies that develop games? Yeah. So, I mean, you usually get it wrong the first time. I think it's pretty common that you get V1 of a product out there and you use it and your users use it and you see everything that's wrong with it. You realize all of the architectural mistakes that you made, and you can sort of patch it and improve it up to a point, but it's often the case that it's a good idea to just put it aside and then do it again, learning from everything that you did the first time. So, with Ingress, we had the benefit of having millions of users go in and play that game. We were able to monitor it on the back end and understand how it was performing, how it was scaling, what the cost to operate the game was, and we understood that there were ways to do things in a much more efficient way if we were to rebuild the system, and we had people on the team that were capable of doing that. So we undertook to basically do a version 2 and to build all of our future products on that new piece of infrastructure. Yeah, I'm super glad that we did it, because the scale that Pokemon Go hit would have absolutely crushed, our kind of first generation technology. There's no way we would have been able to handle the influx of users. And I am just so impressed by our team and what they've accomplished with the technology, because what we have today is held up to, there have been some outages and we've had our struggles as we've rolled the product out, but it's held up to a staggering amount of traffic. Yeah, it was definitely the right business decision in this case to put V1 aside and invest in V2.
One of the things I'm fascinated by is sort of the relationship that you've created with real world places. A friend of mine described it as, you guys being a virtual real estate company, where you have this control and power over locations in the real world. But I think there's also been, and it sort of stretches from basic issues to more complicated ones on the basic side. I mean, are you going to let people create locations in these vast spots where Ingress players didn't create Pokestops and these portals, to complicated issues like the advertising question and sponsored locations? Can you sort of get into how you view that relationship between locations and virtual objects?
Yeah, I mean, we ended up building Ingress and then Pokemon Go around places that we thought it would be fun for people to discover. In a sense, I guess it's good that we didn't have too much adult supervision when we started, because it probably would have sounded like a really bad idea. Because we were trying to combine things that seemed like they wouldn't fit. Art, historical markers, things like that with museums with a science fiction game, which was what Ingress was, and now with Pokemon. So it was really based around this notion that it would be a good thing if people got out of the house and wandered through their neighborhood or their part of the city or to the other side of the city and discovered things about it that they didn't already know. The thesis was that it would be fun, that people would enjoy it, and that it would just generally be good for cities if people were out using public spaces, maybe bumping into one another, and maybe going to that park that is near your house and you drive by it every day and you never stop there, what would happen if people stopped there and actually used it? Would the park get better? Would people maybe volunteer to clean it up whenever the cleanup day comes around once a year? So it was admittedly kind of a wacky notion to try to combine that kind of civic engagement in a way with a game. We didn't want to do it in a heavy-handed way that was, like, this is a good thing, you need to go out and do this for your city, or you need to go out and do this for your edification. We called it accidental history, was kind of the internal moniker for it. Like, let's just slip this stuff in, and if you stumble across it and you happen to learn something about your community, then you will enjoy it and it'll be a good thing, but we won't make a big deal out of it in the product. So we seeded the initial data set for Ingress with some of the content that we had collected for Field Trip, which was a collection of historical markers across the United States, and a data set of all of the public artwork where we had photographs and GPS coordinates for. So the statue in the park would be the example of that. That was a few 100,000 locations, some museums, libraries. We wanted the game to work in small towns and big cities. And then we asked users of Ingress to find cool places in their neighborhood, their city that they thought would be interesting spots to be portals in Ingress that had some interesting cultural attribute to them, that were visually distinctive. And we asked them to submit those to us to be added to the game. And a lot of gamers really enjoyed that search for cool places to try to find the unique spots in their neighborhood and to try to get them past our filtering process to get them approved to be in the game. For a lot of the early players, that was the game. We're finding these unique places. And through that process, we went from these few 100,000 seed locations, which kind of inhibited the number of people that could play Ingress in the early days, because a lot of, the map was not populated in many parts of the world. But over the course of 2 years and then 3 years, that got built out all around the world. And we've had tens of millions of locations submitted, and many millions of those have been approved and added to the game board. So Ingress was ultimately able to be played in over 200 countries. So that global game data set got created from what people found were interesting in their neighborhoods. And then we were able to use that to launch Pokemon Go, and to launch it in all the countries that we've launched it, and we'll continue that rollout really quickly without needing to go through the step of kind of the months and years of building out that global data set. And I think it seems to be working. I mean, people are going out and exploring their city. They're going to different places. There has been this whole phenomenon of sometimes a local business is near one of these Pokestops, or and they're able to apply a lure to it, which causes the Pokestop to spray out confetti and for Pokemon to appear much more frequently.
And you have at least some data that leads to more purchasing, perhaps, from
we
the
did.
past.
We did early studies on that back in the Ingress days that showed that gamers will memorize the location of these local businesses, that they will visit them more frequently, and that they will make purchases when they're there. And then you see that sort of ad hoc validation from all the small businesses that have adapted that strategy now themselves, just buying lures through our in-app purchase system and applying it to the Pokestops that are near their businesses. And some of them have published ROI metrics around that, and there are how-to guides out there for local businesses about how to use Pokemon to help the local business. So I think that's really cool. The power, if you will, is in the hands of the users and the local businesses that are savvy and want to take advantage of that.
But long term, do you see, you were saying you see these in-app purchases maybe not being the best way to make money as sponsored locations?
Well, we do both. But from the very beginning, we did want to try to grow a business that would be a complement to in-app purchase. So, I assume a lot of you guys are deeply into in-app purchase, and the challenges there. Or just bumped into the CEO of Kabam, and you have this tension always between game design and monetization, with that model, and it's tough. It's tough to be disciplined about it, and tough to understand where you want to draw the line between monetization and fun gameplay. I grew up with computer games and video games, and I love making them and playing them, and we wanted to always preserve the integrity of the game design if possible, and So we felt like it would be great to be able to complement in-app purchase with a sponsorship model that was economically strong, economically viable, to take a little bit of the pressure off of in-app purchase, so that we, could protect ourselves from ourselves, that we wouldn't, have to cave to to that pressure to just dial it up a little bit more. So it's in its early days. We have run that through Ingress. We have a number of global sponsors in that game. We launched Pokemon Go with McDonald's in Japan. We are talking to a whole bunch of other businesses that want to, take advantage of that model for Pokemon Go in other parts of the world. So I think it's promising. Again, it's early days, and people have been talking about ads in video games for a long time. But I think this is an example of a case where, because you're able to help, draw people to physical locations, you can really do something that not too many other forms of advertising can do. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Though users and businesses have sort of scooped you on this, I think you've said part of the business strategy was also holding events. You haven't got around to that, but how does events sort of fit into the business?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that, again, I come to this to this group of people, and I know there are a lot of people here that are probably very involved in things like esports. Events and games are becoming a huge deal, not just in our particular category of games. Games are now socially mainstream. People want to connect with other gamers. They want to do it not only online, but they want to do it in the real world. And we see that manifesting across all different parts of the industry. And we've seen esports explode into this huge deal. With our particular kind of game, it involves people going out and playing in the real world and playing with their friends and meeting new people. So events have always been kind of part of the mix for us. We started with very informal meetups with Ingress, where we had our first meetup with about 45 people, and just kind of observed that people were thrilled to come together and meet other people who were into the same thing as they were, and just share experiences with the game.
What did they do at the meetup?
Well, and the difference between, I guess, our game and just a meetup about a game is that you can get together and actually play the game. So you're physically coming together, you're playing together, you're catching Pokemon or harvesting items from Pokestops, or in Ingress, harvesting things from portals and battling between the two factions. But then you can go for beers or food afterwards. So it's really, provides a great combination of gameplay and real life, just social hanging out. I think of it as a fun, very inexpensive alternative to going to a movie or just going out to a restaurant or bar. It's more active than either of those things, and provides a lot of kind of open space for conversation and just kind of hanging out. So I think it's a great social option. So players of Ingress liked it. We formalized those events. We came up with a name for them. They're called Anomalies. We started organizing them in cities around the world every month on a monthly cadence. We settled on this pattern where on one weekend, we'll do an event in Asia, Europe, and the US. So we pick 3 cities in each of those 3 parts of the world, and every month we basically do a global event. And those now draw sometimes in excess of 10,000 people, in that range of 5,000 to 15,000 people at each site. We've started live streaming those. Our last event in Tokyo, Nico had over 60,000 people viewing the stream of the event, and we had north of 10,000 people on site at the event. So we wanted to do that with Pokemon Go. It was one of those things that we wanted to transplant from our experience with Ingress and replicate with Pokemon Go. Disaster backstage. For those of you that have followed the Pokemon Go media thing, you would be aware that users sort of started spontaneously organizing their events long before we ever got to it. So a couple of weeks after the game launched, there was an event with 9,000 people in San Francisco, and professional sports teams have organized Pokemon Go events in their stadiums. College campuses have done the same. So players have really beaten us to the punch in terms of self-organizing these. We're supportive of that. These are fan-organized events. They're not sort of companies exploiting the brand at this point. So they're great. And we probably will do our own events at some point in time. Pokemon, of course, has had Pokemon tournaments and national championships and international championships for a long time. So they're definitely familiar with that kind of phenomenon, and bringing Pokemon Go and that tradition of having Pokemon events together is going to be great, but at the current scale that we're at and the number of people that are getting together, it's logistically is pretty challenging. So we have to figure out how to do these things safely and find the proper kind of venue and environment and get the right sort of event staff in place to do them. But I'm looking forward to that.
On the hardware side, I mean, do you think the future in augmented reality is the combination of smartphones with these pins that Nintendo's going to start selling for Pokemon Go, or is there something specific that you see augmented reality hardware evolving into? What would you want that would make the experience you're trying to achieve better?
I mean, I'm a science fiction fan, so I want the contact lenses that transform everything into whatever kind of themed world I want it to be. Rainbow's End, Werner Vinge kind of described a world like that. I think a lot of people see that archetype as something that we'd like to have and that's probably going to get created within our lifetime, and I'm very much looking forward to it. When we started Niantic, there was a watch project underway at Google. There was what ultimately was called Google Glass was underway at Google. I personally kind of see an evolution of wearables, things like watches and things that you carry with you, Fitbit, Pokemon Go Plus, towards glasses, and glasses evolving from things that are maybe not super sleek and sexy in the beginning, but will get more and more so over time. To me, it's a continuum. It's not a binary thing where there's not AR one day and there is AR at some point in time when some particular device gets launched. I think you can do a super fun AR experience with just a phone. I think Pokemon Go proves that, but it'll be better with devices. I'm really looking forward to the Pokemon Go Plus launch because that's going to give people a way to play the game and not look at their phone all the time and look around them and see the interesting places that we're trying to help people discover. We'll definitely take advantage of other kinds of AR devices as they become prevalent out in the market. I'm very excited about investing in that area, about building prototypes and bringing our gaming products to that hardware as it comes to market, and maybe helping some of that hardware be successful in the marketplace. It's really exciting times, I think, for anyone making games and anticipating the kinds of experiences that we're going to be able to create as those devices really transform people's experience out in the world.
So tying that back to software for the last question, do you, part of what's made Pokemon Go really good is this aspect of you have to figure it out. There's not a lot of instructions. You're talking to your friends, that social interaction. How do you maintain that going forward in sort of the years to come?
The not knowing what's coming part of it?
Well, you have to figure it out as you go, and there's just these constant potential layers of evolution. I mean, where is this all going?
Yeah, well, I think augmented reality, that real-world gaming concept, you can embed interesting hidden things out in the real world, and they can have all kinds of different behaviors if you find them by yourself, if you interact with them with other people. So the gameplay mechanics, I mean, that's one of the things I'm most excited about, is that we've only just scratched the surface. It's like this whole new set of game interactions that we can start experimenting with and start building products around. So I think there's ample room for products that are going to surprise and delight users that build on, but are very different from what we have done with Ingress or Pokemon Go. There's a ton of different ways that you can take that in different kinds of games and experiences that you can build. So yeah, I mean, and as new hardware comes online, it's going to be super fun to see what people create. We're going to take a stab at it, but I'm hoping that other people in the industry jump in and create fun games that I can go out and play.
Well, thanks for joining me, John, and thanks for joining us here.